Give me a thumbs up. All right. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Historic Architectural Review Board on Monday, November 5th, 2018. We've discussed this once or twice before about reading the entire agenda. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the agenda this week, and next month I'm just going to ask for a vote to approve or not approve the agenda without reading it, as long as you guys have looked at it prior to the start of the meeting. If there are any objections to that from the public, we'll go back to reading it, just reading the entire agenda. If there's any objection from the board, we'll go back to reading the entire agenda. But saying that, number one, we'll call to order. Number two is the approval of the agenda. Number three is the approval of minutes of August 6th, 2018 meeting. Number four, announcements. 5 is old business. 6 is new business, which under A is application CA 18-04. It's a request by James Griffin, trustee for the Griffin Living Trust, owner, for a certificate of appropriateness to allow alteration of the exterior or premises of a building located at 25405 West Newberry Road, which is tax parcel number 02219, tax 000, tax 000, located within the Newberry Historic District. Number 7 will be topics from members for discussion, and 8, of course, will be adjourned. All those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, majority. So, agenda is approved. Has everybody looked over last month's minutes? Does anybody have any questions or see anything that needs to be changed? Second. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. All right. Announcements. We actually have no announcements for this meeting. We have no old business. So that brings us to new business. And I do need to ask, is this a quasi-judicial or is a not a quasi-judicial? Okay, because it's not noticed as quasi.
Always a good question.
All right. So this being a quasi-judicial meeting, we have a procedure that we're going to follow this evening. The procedure is to ensure that the applicant provides a complete presentation of their request prior to any testimony being provided by the staff. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination, and all documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The procedure we will follow this evening is that we will first hear from the applicant, and the applicant's presentation has no time limit. The applicant will then be subject to cross-examination, and then the staff will then enter the staff report into the record and answer any questions. Number 4, the applicant will have the opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the application. Number 5, the floor will be open for public comment, and each presentation will be limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public will have an opportunity to question the applicant or the staff. Number 6, the applicant will have an opportunity for closing arguments. And number 7, the public hearing will be closed and the commission will enter into deliberations. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's any ex parte communications on the board. And I have no communications either. All right, anybody that is going to speak on the application CA 18-04, I'm going to need you to stand up and raise your right hand. All right. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? All right, well, thank you. All right, Mr. Griffin, if you can come up to the podium and state your name, please, and give us your presentation.
Green is go. First of all, those that don't know me, I'm Jamie Griffin, originally from Levy County. Now live over at the river in Dixie County, but now currently undertaking the project of the old backyard barbecue. Purchasing the building, I believe back in March now, somewhere in that neighborhood of this year. A lot of time, effort, thought, money, the other stuff has gone into this project. As you can see from what you've already got in front of you, for what we're asking, it was kind of we didn't know that we needed to do this. So Brian saved us on that and got us here in front of you to go over the changes that we needed to get approved by you guys, if we could possibly do that. In your packet, I think you've got a good explanation of the things that we want to do that change the exterior a little bit. I've read the comments from the staff about things that they might want to alter a little bit from that. I'm not here to argue anybody. I'm here to try to figure out what we can do, and when we leave tonight, we'll have an agreement, even if I don't like it. We just need to move forward with it. So, as far as the entrance to the left side and the entrance on the right side, the changes are on the left side, which is removing, which to me, the brick that they put in there just doesn't match. It was probably done in, I don't know, probably after the hardware store, because it was wood when it was the hardware store. But it doesn't match the building at all. So to me, it just needs to go, regardless of what gets put back in there. As far as doing the undercarriage like the staff is recommending, we're totally fine with that. It's not drawn that way. You have this rendition in your packet, which shows it glass all the way to the floor. And they're recommending that we raise it up, maybe even, my thoughts were maybe even match the other side where they've got the planters out of brick that come up the glass. I'm fine with that. No problem with that at all. The awning, I'm kind of partial to the awning. First of all, I hate canvas awnings. I think they're mid-80ish, and that was my disco years myself, so I'm not a real big fan of canvas awnings, but the architect thought that the awning was more appropriate for this building, being that it's the type that comes out from the building, which we've got pictures in there of old buildings that have tin roofs that come out, but they also have posts. And we're trying to do it without having posts, because then we get into right-of-way issues and things like that. Another reason for wanting to flatten the left side, other than to make it go with the other side, is in the next phase, which is our 5-year plan. We'd like the stairway that enters from the front to actually come inside the building. And with those wing walls the way they are, you can't do that. But if it's flat, we'd be able to bring the stairway to upstairs inside the building. That's not now. That's just planning for the future there for that. So those are basically the request and the reason behind the madness. But if you have any questions for me, I should be able to answer them for you pretty quickly. Been pretty hands-on from the very beginning with all this. So.
Mr. Griffin, the building currently has those 2 green posts
Mhm.
out in the front of it, which appear to be period for the building. I don't know how old they are, but the structure of them appear to be fairly old.
They're structural.
Are you planning on retaining them, reusing them?
We're going to use those. They actually hold the beam up that goes all the way across the front.
Okay, so those are
It's structural.
basically, okay, so those are staying.
That's original,
Okay.
for sure.
That will tend to keep some of that historical,
Hey, our goal has been to really make it the premier building downtown from the very beginning, so.
Great start.
I just, it's more than just a restaurant to me. It means something to me, so.
well, it's obviously, it's a very big piece of Newberry, been here a very long time, I think a year or two longer than you. Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Griffin? Yes, sir.
If I may, Mr. Chair. On the drawing, I don't notice, I noticed that railings are currently there, preventing it to going into the sidewalk. Is that something that's in the plans? Is that too soon to ask for?
That's city, I think.
That is
You're
too,
talking about the railings along the sidewalk?
I'm talking about the railings currently on the pictures that, from that step down.
Yeah, those railings belong to the city.
So that
those will
belongs to
stay
the
there.
city?
Yeah.
How is that gonna tie into the new structure of the building? Is the city planning on?
It'll look just like, if you look at the east side, it'll be identical to that. So you'll have, the east side comes out to the sidewalk, and then you've got the sidewalk, and then you have the railings there. So it'll mirror that look, if I'm understanding your question right.
Yeah, it was just my concern is this looks like a really nice building. It looks like it's trying to keep the
Are you saying the
historic
railings
feel
don't
of
look
it, but
nice?
that railing might
Saying the
kill
railings don't look nice?
the appeal of the curb appeal, man.
Think
Your
of-
railings have gotta get changed or,
I mean, we go put a fresh coat of paint on those railings. We did that a couple of years ago.
but did you guys look into how that would look into?
We can't. It's not our property, so.
That belongs to the city, that would be a city issue.
I would be up for whatever they want to do to it, including removing it, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's important because there's a little bit of
There's a
uptick there, a little
Right.
ramp there. So it's probably more for the protection of maybe somebody in a wheelchair or
Kids and
Yeah.
kids, children,
Yeah.
keep them
I
out of the street.
like the safety it protects between the sidewalk and the road. So,
Absolutely.
But it's probably time for another. We did a great Newberry cleanup 3 years ago, and we painted that stuff so we can organize another volunteer day.
That was my main thing, was
Yeah.
is it gonna be
Yeah.
updated as well as the building gets
Yeah.
updated?
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I did take a picture before I came in of the Boss Hart building in the next block over, and they do have the same type of, it's just old, it's not brand new, ours look brand new, but they've got the lean-to type roof that have the supports going back to the building, which is what we're wanting to do
For the awning.
to avoid post. The whole reason is to give us the structure that we need, but to avoid post, to have to hold the structure up.
All right, anything else? Mr. Griffin, you want add anything else? All right. At this time, if we can get the staff to give us their report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we've stated, this is a request by James Griffin. He's the trustee for the Griffin Living Trust, who is the owner, to make some exterior alterations to a building which is in the historic district, which requires the Historic Architectural Review Board approval. There's a diagram that shows you the location within the historic district where the property is located. Current photo of the building. you can see from this photo, and especially when you take a close-up, there have been a number of modifications over the years to this structure. In years past, there doesn't appear to have been a whole lot of emphasis placed on maintaining the historical architectural features of the building, as we'll see as we go further back in time when we look at the photos. But you can easily see that the brick pattern on the recessed doorway does not match the original brick by a good margin. Same with the planter that was put in the middle around those posts. It also is yet another type of brick, not of the historic variety that the building was constructed out of. And I believe Mr. Griffin's going to replace those doors as well with new doors, new commercial grade doors. Those look like they're probably residential grade. He's going to put some doors that match the aluminum that the glass work is held in with. The side of the building, you can see all of those little archways. Those used to be windows or doors. And there is a third change, and it's reflected in the draft or resolution that I handed out. Any exterior change that's visible to the public is supposed to be included, and I think Mr. Griffin, it's kind of a minor consideration to even think about it, just changing the location of a door. But I went ahead and added that in because he is going to brick off those three entrance, well, one window and two doorways, and then he's going to open back up one of the doors closer to State Road 26. And the reason is that that's necessitated by the design of the interior layout. It's a safety issue, a life safety issue. It needs extra ingress and egress point for emergencies. And where the current doors are, that's the kitchen, now in the kitchen area only. It wouldn't be accessible to the public, and so it needs to open up one of those old entranceways again. And he doesn't need the other, so he can close off those. And then it'll be bricked over and presumably stuccoed, and it'll match the existing exterior finish. Some street views, current street views looking down the street. There you can see the Bosshart awning that they have is one of the flat design type awnings with the braces that come off from up higher. Then you've got on the north side of the road, also looking east, you've got Golden Pineapple, which has this is what's described as a shed type awning. It's a triangular awning with canopy or canvas canopy over it. Next to that is this blue awning, is a metal awning too, but this type of awning, based on the research provided by the National Park Service, guidance on awnings, historic awnings, didn't come out until in the 50s and 60s. It wouldn't necessarily be period appropriate. And so we come to the renderings, which show it does have a flush front. There's still a little bit of a recess, probably a foot to a foot and a half deep recess to accommodate the posts, which are going to stay, as Mr. Griffin pointed out. And so there will be some recess in the redesign, and it will actually bring it flush with the existing recess on the opposite side, on the right side. Again, another view. You can kind of see there the structural posts are going to stay, and the glassed in front would be just behind that. An overview looking down to the right would be State Road 26 side of the structure, and so wrong button. This doorway will become a secondary doorway. And again, there'll be a flush window presentation as opposed to the current brick recess presentation. And again, you can see here where it kind of matches the existing depth on the right side, the western side.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Brian a question, or do you want to hold questions for him?
I guess we can go ahead and ask a question while it's on your mind.
Brian, Jamie mentioned that he was gonna bring this, opening out to the street so that you could go up the stairways from the inside. Is that part of this plan, or is that a future plan?
Mr. Chair, no, that'll be a future plan. But actually, I think if I understood him, he's going to close off
close
that
that off.
opening and open it interior right
Yeah,
there.
he's gonna,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So it's not gonna be recessed, I mean, it's not, the recess is still gonna be there in the front, but it's just gonna,
It'll be bricked off
turn the
or
stairway.
closed off.
So then you'll turn the stairway so you go up this way a little bit and then up, or?
I believe that's, yeah. And then the eastern side there, the two areas that are circled in red, the one on the left represents the three current openings that'll be bricked over and plastered over, and then the one on the right represents where the former opening that had been closed will be reopened. This was a document. This is also in the supplement that I handed out. This is a document that was created back in 2011 when the historical building inventory was done. What I wanted to highlight there was just that on page 2, under changes in locations or conditions, it is mentioned in the inventory that it was altered, and it's not to standards. The ground level storefront had been modified and was not to historical standards. And so it just goes to sort of solidify the belief that there's been a lot of alterations over time made to this building that did not comply with the historic architectural features that were originally part of the building. Some historic photos going back. This one's the 1986 facade. As you can see, it still has the similar recess in the front. But when you look at a close picture of it, back then it was wood. It was actually, this is a product that wasn't even invented back when the building was originally built, called T111. So at some point this was added in some point in the history. It was redone with this type of wood. There's a picture, I believe, from about 1975 that shows that the structure underneath the stucco is actually brick. The stucco, I believe, we found records that said it was done in 2006. And so prior to that, it was brick. You can see in the corner, it wasn't the True Value hardware from '86. It was actually, it looks like Newberry hardware back then. And you can see that even back then, the windows and doors had already been blocked up. And then going way back, this photo is identified as being around 1910. You can see in the distance the subject property. Back then, it actually had a balcony and canopy over the balcony. So obviously a major structural feature, architectural feature that hasn't existed for decades, quite some time. You know, in a blow-up, you can see it a little bit better there. And then another photo also looking at it. And so this one I think is from about 1920 based on the Model T in the distance. There's a 1920, 25 Model T. But, and you can see the power line, so it's at least past 1910 at some point since we had electricity in 1910. Again, blow up, you can see the canopy over the balcony that's no longer a feature. Again, to give some perspective, the traditional storefront design elements, you've got the building has quite a few of these features. One of the things we think it probably originally had, based on this wonderful picture that Mr. Griffin was able to find, did have the base panel. It's referred to as a bulkhead sometimes. This one it refers to as a bulkhead, which is more period specific, more period appropriate. And here's an example of a building that was in Newberry in 1986. It has since burned down and been removed. It's part of the Pocket Park now. But it shows you a good example of what those base panels look like, what the doors from that era typically look like. Usually they were made of wood, but they could be cast iron. And so when it comes to the awning, the research on the awning from this National Park Service showed that they typically were of a shed design. The aluminum awnings didn't usually come in until about the 50s or 60s. Although those original photos show you that they did have metal awnings, but they tended to be tin or a wood. And they were at a slant. They weren't perpendicular to the side to the wall. The windows themselves raised off the ground with wood, cast iron, or metal panels. Canvas awnings were typical, but there were sometimes tin and wooden canopies. The top left corner is an example of the shed type of awning that staff is recommending. And so the recommendation would be that a decorative period-appropriate base panel or bulkhead be added under the windows so that they don't go all the way to the floor, and that the awning be of a shed-type design with a canvas. Another benefit to the owner of that is that you can use the front as advertising space. You can put the name of or some similar information on the front of that canvas canopy where it hangs down, and so it gives you some additional visual advertising space from the street. And that is the staff presentation and recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right, does the applicant have any? Yeah, I guess we could probably ask if anybody's got any questions for staff.
Can you back up a few slides, Mr. Chairman, to the picture? More. Up, forward, that one.
Do you recognize the car?
So, on this facade, the property line that you own is right at the edge of the building. We talked about, we got the zero lot line out at Oakview Village. That was the first time we'd ever done that in Newberry. But actually, this was a zero lot line building. The building is built right on the line. So when you come out this door, or you're proposing to move it to this door, you open the door right into the right of way.
That's just a fire exit.
Yeah. They won't, the staff won't go out there. But anyway, you may like what I'm going to say. It's not a great situation to have even the fire exit enter and out into the property, into the right of way. Same way in the front, I think, you said that belongs to the city. I think that actually belongs to DOT, right up to the building, and then the DOT maintains the sidewalk, and we do a little maintenance there. But the tree wells and all that are actually belong to DOT. But anyway, at one point, the former owner had proposed closing that street and using it for outdoor dining. And it was opposed mainly by the people who owned the house behind you and the bank across 254th Street, who used that as a drive-in teller. But the bank is not a bank anymore. The former owner has sold to someone else. And thinking perhaps one day down the road we may want to readdress the issue of closing that part of the street, making it outdoor dining, which I think adds something to historic downtown. People like that. It's kind of like the great outdoors in High Springs. It adds a lot of vitality to your downtown. I'm one of the homeowners on that street. It wouldn't bother me at all if we had to go down the next street to get to the homeowners, to the homes that are there. And really on that short block, I think there's only 2 houses before you get to another cross street. So anyway, that's something that met with a lot of resistance, mainly from the homeowners behind who, like I say, have sold to somebody else now. So that may be something that we want to bring up. And I think the justification would be we don't like the exit coming right out to the right of way. We had, I think the fire department talked about access to the area, but I think we could work around all those things. Not as part of this meeting, but as something that I think we ought to put back on the table again as part of our downtown revitalization. But everything else about that, I'm happy with. Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is for staff.
Yes, sir.
On the staff recommendations on the awning to be canvas shed type design, why is the involvement with the shed in comparison to what the proposed pre-engineered aluminum canopy? What's the difference there? I mean, from the looks of it, it looks like the Bosch Hart already has similar type, and I want to know why they're recommending a different version.
Mr. Chair, before staff answers that, I just want to say for all the folks who are tuning in at home on YouTube or watching on the television expecting to see the meeting on the acquisition of Canterbury, we will get to that meeting shortly. I think we may have tried to squeeze too many meetings too close together here, but we're finishing up with Historical Architectural Review Board meeting. You're welcome to continue watching, or you can give us 10-15 minutes and tune back in, and we'll be up to date with that meeting. So just letting you know what's going on.
To get to that question real quick, Steph. I mean, this looks very beautifully drafted. The awning seems like it would be in place, and to put an awning in the, if we can go back to the ones that you guys suggested, all the colored, it just seems to take away from the style and the historic value of what we're looking at here. So I just wanted to see where staff was getting at with the shed. Yeah, see.
This, Mr. Chair, basically based on the direction or the research done by the National Park Service, there's a in the staff report, there's a section in there from the National Park Service on preservation, and number 44 guidance basically talks about awnings specifically, and this is the type like there, the black and white striped one, is, according to the research, more typical of what you would find in that era. The type that's been presented, if it was put on a building that was constructed in the 50s and 60s, would be more period appropriate, but because the building goes back beyond farther than that, it's actually not appropriate in a historical context for this particular building. Going further, if you wanted to go completely, truly historical, you can see there to the left how far out. These were basically tin canopies. That was very common for this style, as well as the canvas. The problem with these, as Mr. Griffin pointed out, is that they require a pole down to support it on the bottom, and then you get into placing, as Mr. Conrad pointed out, you're in DOT right of way then if we're placing poles in DOT right of way, which requires a whole different level of permissions and that kind of approvals. And so basically you're left with needing to put up a structure that's freestanding, self-supporting, without poles into the right of way. And period-wise, the shed style canvas is what the guidance from the National Park Service on historic preservation says is appropriate for that era.
Will that impact anything for the city as far as any kind of, I don't know, grants or something for the historic value of our city? Because I'm looking at aluminum and tin. I mean, aluminum aluminum's like the modern day tin, if you think about it. I mean,
typically those considerations only come into play if we're applying for a grant, and part of that grant application would include putting something that's not period appropriate in the grant application. On a privately owned property like this, it shouldn't have any bearing on any kind of grants, that kind of thing. And as far as the one that's already on the Boss Hart, one of the things about trying to bring back a historic district is to try to slowly and incrementally over time fix those mistakes that might have been made in the past. And so, again, that would not have been period appropriate for the Boss Hart building either. It's obviously been there a long time, but if they were to come forward with a renovation plan, the recommendation would be the same, not to allow that style of awning because it's not period appropriate.
Well,
Mr. Chair?
yes, ma'am.
What would be the shade comparison of a shed style shade versus
Similar.
the aluminum?
That really is
your
dependent on
purposes?
just the depth. If the depth is the same, you're typically going to get the same type of shading.
What I want to
factor.
remind the board is just recently we did just approve a canopy, for the financial, I forgot what they were.
Edward Jones.
Yeah, we just approved it, and we approved it as a shed-style canvas type canopy, and that was in keeping with the district and the time period. Also, when I'm looking at the picture of the original canopy, I'm looking at a metal version of a shed-style canopy. So, I mean, shape would be very similar to the original.
Mr. Chair, and actually the guidance from the National Park Service document addresses that. Those are called mansard styled, which again were not brought into the marketplace until like the 60s and 70s. And so while they have the shape and appearance, based on the materials they're made out of, they're not considered period appropriate.
Well, I was just looking at that one right there, and
Yeah,
it
those
still
are-
has a very similar, shed
Yes.
style with a triangular sides, which is what we're adding as a, just one of the things that we're requesting that they add to it. But,
I don't want to argue over or really get into depths of an awning. I just feel that aluminum awning is more of a modern day version of what the tin used to be like. And there is no pillars having to hold it up like they would a tin. So I think the research here seems very in depth when it comes to the engineering standpoints of it. And I mean, me personally, seeing a historic with the cloth material style awning, it's kind of a more of a 40s and 50s kind of versus the 20s that I'm seeing the tin. I'm about attracting new business to Newberry, but keeping that historic value. And I don't see where this awning is destroying that, in my opinion. So I mean, I'm for the recommendations of the city. I have an issue with changing number 2 of the rest staff recommendation. That's it. That's all I was bringing it up for. Sorry.
yes, sir.
I agree with Naeem. I don't think it makes that much difference if he puts the flat metal awning over the cloth awning. Our historic downtown is very small and only a couple blocks long, one building deep, and it's all different kinds of awnings out there. But I don't think it's right to push one business to try to start a trend, although, like somebody mentioned, we have asked the one business to put a bubble type awning out there, but I don't think it's a big deal if he puts a flat awning out there. Does the same thing. I don't think it detracts from our downtown, and I don't think we need to push that. So
I want businesses to come to Newberry. I don't want an awning to be a mouth of bad taste, especially if it's in good likings like this.
yeah, I'm good with the first staff recommendation about the decorative base panel bulkheads down under, and the owner's okay with that, but I have reservations about making them put a cloth awning up there instead of a metal one.
And Mr. Chair, just to be clear, that it's not so much that staff is opposed to a metal awning, because obviously metal awnings were part of the period based on the old historic photos. It's the design of the metal awning. It's the design where you have the supports from above holding it up was not appropriate for the period. Those weren't invented until much later, so several decades later. A metal awning would be period appropriate, but it's more along the shape. And
But if you go down that row, we've got other metal awnings down there. You go down to the hardware store, they've got the metal awning.
yeah, absolutely.
It's not out
And
of character for what we've already got down.
but again, I guess that was the point. I didn't make a very good point of it, was that incrementally, if you improve as every application comes in, then over time, without forcing anybody or creating a huge push all at once, incrementally you get back to the historic nature one at a time. And it starts, we started with, as you pointed out, Edward Jones. That was kind of the first one.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would say, I don't have a vote here, but for everything the owner has done already to restore that building to the historic, that given a little bit on this one, and, you know, just remember that building needed a whole lot of work. And it was sort of a blessing to find somebody who could purchase the building and do all of that work. So this seems
Right.
pretty minor to me. And we're getting a whole lot of other things that are being restored closer to what the historic was. So I'm not sure the Edmund Jones comparisons, they were looking to replace it. We just wanted them to spruce it up and kind of come in with something a little bit bigger and nicer. So, I mean, I think if the argument is incrementally getting back, we've already achieved a much bigger step back towards what it was with the other, with the things that the homeowner has done, or the business owner has done voluntarily. So this seems a little bit, I would agree with the board members at the end, this seems kind of a small point.
Exactly.
Any more questions for staff?
Entertain a motion or?
Not yet.
I'm just saying, 'cause time is.
At this time, the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the application. You're okay? All right. We'll open the floor for public comment, and each presentation will be limited to 5 minutes, and members of the public will have an opportunity to question the applicant or staff. Is there anybody here that wants to speak to this application? All right. There being none, public hearing will be closed and the commission will enter into deliberations. Mr. Conrad?
Said my piece. Don't have anything more. I'm ready for a motion.
The only thing I want to add is I think the compromise between the two versions of the bringing it to the historical is that the aluminum awning kind of restores the impression of the balcony to the building that was there. Even if it's not 100% back to the original time period of the original awning.
That is a very good point. Right.
No, I'm good. I mean, I said my piece on the awning. I think it's.
I'm fine with the owner to.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and read the resolution so you all can put a motion on the table if you'd like.
Okay. Can you do that, Mr.
Just
Attorney?
for my purposes, so we know what the resolution should say, I believe you all have the draft resolution in
Yes.
front of you.
You're going to be reading the revised?
I am.
Okay.
And then I'll read this by title only, but I want to make sure staff understands what your direction is in your motion. As I understand it, our staff is recommending that paragraph 1 say remove the existing, I'm down at the bottom under section 1, and then said petition for CA 18-04 is hereby, okay. You want me to add that to the, okay. Okay. Said petition for CA 1804 is hereby approved to allow the following alterations, and that removing the existing recessed brick storefront on the left eastern side of portion of the building and replacing it with a flush glass and aluminum storefront that is decorative, period appropriate, base panel bulkhead to be added under the windows to the left-sided renovations where the brick access is being removed. So that language would be added to paragraph number 1. I believe number 2 is to say, as it is presently drafted, the installation of a new aluminum awning over the right western side of the storefront to provide shade inside and cover from the wind and rain outside. Mentions of the awning should be 24 feet, 10 inches wide, 4 feet deep. I don't know that there's any, based on the discussion, any change to that paragraph. Now, with that, I'll go ahead and read the motion, if you'd like. by title. Number 3 is reopen the side entrance door on the east side of the building adjacent to Southwest 251st Street. Close 2 existing doors and 1 window, brick over and finish to match the existing exterior wall. That would be the what is encompassed in the motion that we're about to put on the floor. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and read resolution number ARB CA 2018-04, a resolution of the Historic Architectural Review Board of the City of Newberry, Florida, for approval of a certificate of appropriateness authorized under Section 11.11 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for alteration of the outside exterior of a building or structure that is visible to the public, allowing a change to the storefront of a commercial building which is designated historic by the provisions of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations and is located at 25405 West Newberry Road, tax parcel number 02219-000-000 within the Newberry Historic District, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number HARB CA 2018-04 as read by title only.
All right. Does anybody want to put a motion out there?
Move to approve resolution number HARB CA 2018-04.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public on the motion on the floor? All right. Comment from the board. Okay. Do we have comments from the board on the motion on the floor?
So I'd like to add an amendment that we accept the resolution as stated in the title, but that we also accept staff recommendation number 1 on the base panel bulkhead, but not staff recommendation number 2 that the awning be a canvas type design.
Okay.
Wasn't it read that way?
Yes, that is in keeping with the motion.
No, it actually.
But that clarifies it, so that's certainly fine.
It actually, he just read the recommendations into it because number 1 doesn't have the bulkheads on there
Oh, okay.
in the resolution.
Gotcha. I thought you read the both ones.
Any more comments from the board? Does the maker of the motion
Yes.
accept?
I do.
Does the seconder
Yes, I
accept?
do.
Any comments from the public regarding the motion on the floor? All right, so we have a second, or we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimous. All right. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. All right, so our next topic is topics from members for discussion. Mr. Conrad, do you have anything? No, sir. Nine?
No, sir.
No.
Ms. Wanda? Jessica?
No, but quickly, I wanted to thank the staff for having the training 2 weeks ago, the historic training that the state put on.
Thank you. That was really a good training course for all of us, and we know all of us got something out of it. I do want to remind everybody that tomorrow is Election Day. So if you haven't taken advantage of early voting in any of the multiple forms and ways that they have, please do not miss your opportunity to vote tomorrow. Mr. Mayor? Mr. Attorney? Mr. Thomas? All right. No more comments, so this meeting's adjourned.